Hello BookTube, so today I want to bring you just a couple quick thoughts on Every Hearted Doorway. I really debated whether or not to do this as an individual video just because it's a novella. It's under 200 pages in print format. And I don't necessarily have a ton of things to say about it, but for consistency's sake, I said I was going to do individual video reviews for everything I read for the BookTube SFF shortlist, so I'm gonna go ahead and do this. Initially, I gave this book a 3.75/4 stars on Goodreads. Since kind of sitting with it and letting it percolate in the back of my brain, I kind of would change that to like a 3.5 max. I think there's a lot of really good stuff in this, but I don't think I was blown away by it, and it wasn't because of the length. Why is it that like a murder of crows decides to roost in the trees outside my window every single time I try to film? I don't know. Wow. Okay, so Every Hearted Doorway by Shauna McGuire is a little fantasy novel set in our world, and it's about a boarding school for kids who have gone through magical doorways into other worlds and come back. The boarding school's purpose is to help them reacclimate to life in our world and to learn to live with the fact that they most likely will never go back to their fantasy lands. And so there's a little bit of a discussion about like different types of fantasy lands that exist in books. So you have things like high logic fantasy lands or high nonsense fantasy land. In the course of this story, there's a mystery that pops up, and it's just about these kids who've gone through different doorways and them trying to solve a little mystery, them trying to come to terms with their situation. Yeah, and that's it. I really love the idea. The crows. It's like I'm in a Hitchcock film out there. Goodness. Okay, so I really like the concept, and I really liked the supporting characters. Well, here's the thing. There's like two different sets of supporting characters. There's like an inner circle of supporting characters, and then there's a bunch of supporting characters who just have names or like a one-liner description. Those characters were not well developed at all. They were very throwaway and kind of distracting. But I liked the inner circle of secondary characters. I thought they were really great. My biggest problem with this book was that I felt the protagonist was the most boring character. And I feel bad about saying that too, because one of the really great things about this book is it does have very diverse representation. So the protagonist is romantic but asexual. And then one of the supporting characters is a trans boy. And, we have a couple characters of color. And so that's really fantastic. And I personally thought all the representation was pretty good. And when I say that I thought the protagonist was boring, I really want to make sure that it's clear that I'm not saying she was boring because she was asexual. That's not what I'm saying at all. Because I read a lot of things and watched things that were either explicitly or non-explicitly ace representation that I thought was really interesting. My issue with this was that you have all these kids going to really cool other worlds and picking up habits or quirks or powers from these alternate worlds that are all really interesting and really cool. But the protagonist, she went to an underworld where basically all she did was stand like a statue. And so the only thing she picked up from this experience was standing really still. And I do get that, okay, there was one moment where that was used for the benefit of the plot. But otherwise, it was just really boring. And it's not even like that the underworld had to be boring. I think when you talk about the kingdoms on life and death and say Deathless, for example, their rulers and the characters in both of those lands are crazy interesting and really unique, and you want to know more about them. But I really wasn't gripped by this protagonist. When she's surrounded by a group of really colorful, interesting characters, I thought it was a real misstep to make her the protagonist. And for someone who's like such a great on the page ace representation, it was kind of disappointing too, because I can't be like, oh yeah, I love this character. I really don't love the character. Another thing, there's a couple things referenced, especially near the end, that's used for kind of dramatic effect, or actually, okay, you know what? From here on out, there might be some minor spoilers. So if you don't want to be spoiled for certain things, I would say turn this review off now. Usually I try to do these reviews without spoilers, but I think when I'm talking critically about stuff that doesn't work for me, I have to get a little into spoiler territory. Because one of the things that doesn't work for me is kind of the entire third act. The climax and the denouement just don't gel, and that's why overall it was kind of an unsatisfying read. So, spoilers from here on out. Okay, so one of the things that really doesn't work for me is that the villain at the end references the protagonist's ability to talk to ghosts, and that there's and this happens earlier, like several times, like people will reference, oh, she's ghost girl, or she's ghosty, or she's talking to ghosts, but we never see her doing this. She doesn't do this. And from what I really gathered when she's reminiscing about her time in her underworld, there weren't ghosts, or at least like not ghosts the way these kids are talking about them. So it really didn't make sense, especially compared to, there's another boy there who, he went to like a fantasy land where everyone was a skeleton, and he has a flute that lets him make bones dance, and he can like communicate with bones and stuff like that. And so like ghosts and bones, it made way more sense to be a reference to him than to her. And we didn't see her talking to ghosts, but it's something that characters repeatedly say about her and that she doesn't refute. So it's not like she's being misrepresented. It's really, I think, us being told something that we're not shown, and it was lazy on the part of the writer. It didn't work because there's like this, I just remember this kind of like moment near the end in the climax where that was like that was something that was like really put forward. And I was just like, no. And then the denouement really didn't work for me because the whole point of her coming back was that the king of the underworld, Nancy, that's her name. So the whole point of her coming back was that the king of the underworld told her that she had to be sure if she wanted to stay. So she had to come home and be sure, and then she could come back. Okay, that's great. So then in the very last chapter, she's talking about how she can make this work. She can stay in our world. She can learn to be okay with that. She can make a new life for herself here. It's fine. It's cool. She can be an assistant to Cade, etc., etc. Nothing in that whole thought process indicates that she is sure that she wants to go back to the underworld. To me, I think there are other ways. I get that that's probably what the author was trying to do. It just didn't work for me. I didn't see it. I think there are other ways, other thought processes, other conclusions she could have come to that would have made her sure that she wanted to return or something. It just didn't work. And then she finds this note from her dead roommate that was really just out of the blue. And again, nothing about that note really felt like her being sure about returning to the underworld, but then the door opens and she gets to go through. And so it just felt really disjointed to me. It didn't resonate. And maybe like all the layered symbolism is there and it just didn't resonate with me, and it resonates with other people. That's possible, but I don't see it. It really felt like there were certain keystones the author was trying to hit, and she didn't quite hit them, but she manipulated the story because she wanted to hit them, right? So it wasn't like they weren't like the facets of the character change weren't actually organically met. They were shoehorned into place. That's how it felt reading it. Man, this is so negative. And also kind of long. Gosh, I really need to, like, it's not bad. And I don't think it needs to necessarily, like, I was fine with the length. I know a lot of people have kind of been like, well, the length wasn't really enough for me to become invested in the characters. I didn't have that problem, except for Nancy. I really just, I thought she was so boring. Because I really loved all the other characters. I loved Cade. I loved Jack. I liked Christopher even. I thought he was interesting. And I feel like he probably should have been hinted at earlier in the book, because he didn't get a line until, I want to say, halfway through. He just kind of pops up, and I think there could have been a little bit of groundwork laid with him before he popped up, since he was present, but we just never had any hint that he was there. And I was really invested in all of them and their stories, and I wanted to know more about their stories. I think it's cool that Sean Maguire is writing more books, or at least another book in the series, though It too is short. I looked up on Goodreads and it's only like 175 pages again. And it's about Jack and Jill. And oh my gosh, like of everyone's story, their story is the one that I could easily see like a full 350 page novel being written about. I would also really love a prequel with Cade's character. So there's certain things about it that I did really like. It just, I don't think the ending really came together. And some of that I also feel like is because of the protagonist she chose. I kind of would have expected Nancy to be a secondary character, not the protagonist. Sorry. I don't know. Like I said, 3.5 stars. I still liked it. I'm definitely going to pick up a copy of Down Among the Sticks and Bones when it comes out, which is the sequel. That got a little rambly there, but those are my thoughts. Let me know if you've read this little novella and what your thoughts of it are down below. And I'll see you guys in my next review. Bye.